Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Sustainable Jersey's webinar 2020 Census. Earn points by making sure your community counts. I'm Maureen Jones, Program Assistant for Sustainable Jersey, and I'm happy to welcome you here today. After our presentation, there will be plenty of time for Q&A. Before we begin, I do have a few housekeeping requests. As an attendee, you are muted, but if you have questions, please either enter them in the question or chat box, or raise your hand and we will do our best to answer them before the webinar ends today. Also, please be sure that you have entered the audio pin if you are using the telephone call-in option. Otherwise, we can't unmute you. Now, I would like to introduce our speakers. Mary Coogan is the Vice President of Advocates for Children of New Jersey, a statewide nonprofit research and action organization which advocates on a broad range of issues affecting children and families, including child welfare, early care and education, juvenile justice, health, and support for low-income families. ACNJ is currently working with the state and several other nonprofit organizations to ensure a complete count in the upcoming census by sharing materials and providing presentations to share information about the importance of the upcoming census and to help ensure a complete count in New Jersey. Samantha McGraw is the program manager at Sustainable Jersey, managing the organization's core operations of the municipal and school certification programs and the grant program. Before we begin, I will turn the presentation over to Samantha for a few short polls to learn more about our audience today. Samantha?
Thanks, Maureen. So as she said, we just have a few short polls before we get started. The first question is, within what capacity are you attending the webinar today? And I'll give everyone about 30 seconds to reply. Okay, looks like we almost have everyone. So it looks like the majority of attendees are affiliated with a municipal green team or municipal staff, and we have some school representation as well, which is excellent. The great thing is that hopefully those of you in municipalities can relay some of the information to the schools within your area as well after the presentation. And then the second question is, are you involved in 2020 census outreach and education? Give everyone a few more seconds. Okay, so it's a pretty even split. So hopefully today you're going to learn a lot more about the census and gain some resources that can help you engage in getting a complete count. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the webinar. So in our webinar today, we will receive background information on what the census is and why it's important, technical aspects of census operations, challenges in obtaining a complete count, and what you can do to make sure all residents are counted. We will also talk about the role of green teams, resources to assist you, and earning points toward your certification efforts for census education and outreach. We will conclude with a question and answer session. Now I would like to turn the presentation over to Mary.
Thank you, Samantha. As Maureen and I mentioned, I work at Advocates for Children of New Jersey, and we are a child research and action organization. My organization is also involved in trying to ensure that New Jersey has a complete count.
Okay, sorry, just a second. It sounds like for some reason the poll hasn't closed. I will try to close it again. I think that's why you can't see my slide advancing. So let me see. Okay, so I think everyone should be able to see the screen now, correct?
I can.
Okay, great. I am so sorry for that that delay. Really apologize. We haven't really run into this issue before, so we will definitely take a look into this after the webinar. So I am just going to resume back to where we were in the presentation before, with just Mary just starting off with the topics that she's going to talk about in her presentation today.
Okay, thanks, Samantha. All good. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how the census is going to roll out, the challenges to getting a complete count in New Jersey, and how you all can get involved. So, why is the census important and what is it? The U.S. Census is a national survey conducted every 10 years by the U.S. Census Bureau to count every person who is living in the United States. So that is people of all ages, races, and ethnic groups, citizens and non-citizens. Next slide. Why is the census important? For a couple of reasons. First, census data are used to determine political power. Through the census, our government representation in Congress is determined, the number of votes that we have in the Electoral College, and how our voting districts are drawn. Census data are also responsible for allocating billions of federal dollars for important federal programs. In New Jersey alone, nearly $23 billion in federal funds is allocated to support transportation, education, and health programs based on census data. Data are also used for planning purposes so that we know where populations are growing so that we can build roads and schools where they are needed. Next slide. On this next slide, you're going to see a sample of some of the programs that are funded in New Jersey, and those federal dollars that we receive on an annual basis are allocated based on census data. Things like New Jersey Family Care, which is both made up of Medicaid dollars and the Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIP, special education grants, the school lunch program, school breakfast program, Head Start, child care, also Medicare. Next slide. And there's also environmental programs. And the ones listed on this slide, just so you know, these are the actual federal dollars, the totals. These are not the amounts that actually come to New Jersey. So through there's about 300 programs that are funded by federal dollars, which are allocated based on census data. George Washington University has what's called a Counting for Dollars project. It's headed up by a professor, Andrew Reamer. And what they've done is they've gone through all the federal programs that rely on census data to allocate the funding, and they've then allocated what each state gets from those dollars. And there is a New Jersey fact sheet, which I believe Samantha has linked to the prior slide, and you can download that and you can see all the different programs that are related to roads and planning and come to municipalities. It's really quite interesting, and I recommend that you look at it. But the reason why we tell people about these programs is that when you're out talking about the census and people say, what's in it for me? It's because all of this money that comes to New Jersey, that's what's in it for them. And if we're not all counted, it impacts all of us. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about how the census is going to be rolled out. What questions are going to be asked and when is it all going to happen? This year, it's going to be a little bit different because in addition to a paper questionnaire, people will be able to complete their census questionnaire online, even using their cell phone if they want, or over the telephone, or ultimately by mail. So starting in March 12th, an invitation is going to be sent out by the Federal Census Bureau saying, here is your unique ID number, which you can use to log on to the census website and complete your census questionnaire. A reminder letter is going to then be mailed out the week of March 16th or 24th because they're hoping more people will complete their census form online. And then after the reminders are sent out, if people still have not completed their census form, then the reminder letter will come out with a paper questionnaire. Also, people will be able to call a number and have their census questionnaire receive assistance by someone on the telephone to complete their census questionnaire. That is also something new this year. Next slide. So the map on your screen now really shows you how the mailing is going to be done. In New Jersey, most people are going to receive the invitation to do it online. There's very few people who are going to have the census form hand delivered or receive the mail form initially, and that's because most of us in the state have an actual mailing address. Next slide. So this is a timeline to show you, as I said, the invitations are going to start going out in March. April 1st is technically Census Day, but we're hoping that people will fill out their census questionnaire in March if they can. And that period of time between March and April is called the self-response time. Then in May, census takers or census enumerators are going to begin visiting the homes of people who have not yet completed their census form, or either online or over the phone. So if you know people who don't want to have a government person coming knocking on their door, urge them to complete the census form online or on the phone. In June, they will continue to visit the homes who haven't responded, and they will finish that up in July. Next slide. So for the door-to-door census enumerators or census takers, as I said, that will begin in May. People need to be aware that any census worker will be wearing a photo ID that will have a Department of Commerce watermark on it and an expiration date. If someone does not have that identification, a person answering the door should not respond to any of their questions and can notify the Census Bureau. Next slide. One of the things that the Census Bureau is saying is that the census is fast, it's safe, and it's important. Meaning the first part, fast. It will only take about 10 minutes to complete the census. And that's because there's very few questions actually asked. On your screen now is the information that the decennial census asks for: the name, the age and date of birth, the gender, the racial and ethnic background of each person in the house, and their relationship to the head of householder or the person who's completing the census form. And then they're also asked whether they rent or own their home. That's it. And it can be done on your own schedule if you do it online. Next slide. What census workers will never ask is for someone's social security number, money, donations, bank or credit card information. And this is, again, something we ask you to share with your neighbors, friends, and colleagues, because if someone is asking for money or credit card information or a social security number, that is a scam. And there will always be scams, and we want to make sure people don't fall victim to a scam. And if there is some concern that somebody is asking for this information, again, it should be reported to the Federal Census Bureau. Next slide. One other thing that's new this year is that in addition to English and Spanish, there will be 12 other languages which are available to people to complete their census form either online or by the phone. And these languages are all listed here. So when the initial invitation goes out in March, there will be a piece of paper with that mailing that says, if you need help or you have questions, call this number. And that statement will be in all of these languages. So if, for example, my native language is Polish, I'll see that number and the statement saying, if I need help in Polish, I call this number. And a person speaking Polish will answer the phone and they could take my census information. Same with all the other languages. So they've really tried to make it easy. If people don't fill it out online or via the phone and they get the paper application, that will only be in English or Spanish. In addition to these languages, there will be language guides available online, and they will be available in another 59 different languages. So people can use them and read them in their native language to find out what the questions are, but the form itself will not be translated into this language. Next slide. So why did the Census Bureau do this? They did it because they're trying to address some of the challenges to getting a complete count in New Jersey. So what are the challenges? Well, even though it's wonderful that the census can be filled out online are on the phone, it's still something new to people. And there's still people in New Jersey who do not have access to the internet. There is a lot of distrust of government. And maybe it's gotten worse because of our current political climate, but I think people are concerned that some people will just not want to fill out their census form because they don't trust government. The Census Bureau is reporting that they have fewer staff who are going to be able to do the follow-up. Now, they are still hiring, so if you know anyone who is looking for extra work, either part-time or even full-time and wants to become a census taker, they can contact the Census Bureau website and apply for a position as a census enumerator. And the last thing is we have a concentration of hard to count populations in New Jersey. Next slide. So when we talk about hard to count populations, I think of that as sort of a term of art specifically related to the census. And what these are these are groups of people who had where there was a low percentage of households who actually returned their census form in 2010. It doesn't mean that ultimately they didn't complete their form, but it took a census taker to come out and knock on the door to get the information. And here's a list. Children under the age of 5, which some people might find to be a little odd. Why would that group be considered hard to count? People of color, African Americans, Hispanic, Asian Americans, non-English speaking people, because obviously they just have a difficulty with the language, and immigrants and renters. So what we're trying to do at AC&J, along with our colleagues at other nonprofits, is to do more outreach to these groups of people to encourage them to complete their census form and tell them why it is easy, safe, and important. Next slide. So what are some of the barriers? People speak another language than English. We said non-English speaking people. They mistrust or are fearful of government. Those are your immigrants or your non-citizens, your undocumented people. They live in a complex household, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But also people who may be in a multi-unit building where their address is not listed, or maybe somebody had a 2-family house and they turned it into a 3-family home. And so the basement apartment or the attic apartment does not have a separate address. And then there are the children. And one of the reasons, well, there's several reasons why we found that children were counted. Sometimes it was because you had a newborn and they didn't have a social security number, so the parents didn't think they should put them on an official government form. Or maybe the parents are not living together. So sometimes the child is with the mother, sometimes the child is with the father, or sometimes the child is with a relative. And so nobody put the child on the form. And also when we had the paper census form, there were a limited number of spaces. And if maybe 2 families were living in the same household and there were a lot of children, if they started from the oldest and went to the youngest, they just ran out of spaces on the form and didn't put in the babies. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about this complex household. These can be multi-generational households where you have grandparents or a great aunt or an uncle living together, or you have households with multiple unrelated families. I know of families even who are still bunking with friends or relatives as a result of Hurricane Sandy. There are sometimes people who move in with a relative temporarily because of a job situation, and they wind up staying. I use this example often where you have a friend of your child who is going to stay with you for a week or so, and then several months later, they're still living in your household, what we would call the couch surfers. Children living in foster care. They would be counted in the foster home in which they're living. So I think sometimes in these households, people just aren't sure who should they put. But we do have a lot of what we call the non-nuclear family or the non-traditional family. And I think it's important for people to understand it's everybody who's living in the household. Next slide. There is an interactive map online which you can get through the census website. And if you're interested, you can go to New Jersey and you can go to your county and your city, and they've actually identified where the hard to count populations are based on the last census. And you can view that if you're interested in knowing what areas near where you live that are hard to count. So next slide. So now what can we do about this? How can we all help make sure that New Jersey has a complete count? So as I said earlier, the Census Bureau, their slogan or their motto this time is the census is safe, confidential, and protected by federal law. And it's easy and it's important. So in terms of safe, census workers take an oath to maintain the confidentiality of the information that they receive. And it's very serious, and they take that oath seriously. In fact, any census taker who violates that oath can be fined up to $250,000 and can do up to 5 years in prison for a violation of the law. Next slide. So who counts in the census? The rule of thumb is, where is the person living on April 1st, 2020? So whoever is living in that household, sleeping in that household, or living most of the time when they complete the census form, they should be included. Newborns should be counted in the household, even if they're still in the hospital on April 1st, they would be included in the house where they're going to go home to. It's the same as people who might be in the emergency room and then get admitted to the hospital. When they're going to come home, they're still going to be counted on in the census questionnaire in the home where they actually do live. Next slide. So let's look at this. As I said, newborns still in the hospital on April 1st, we count them. People living with unrelated individuals all in a house together, we count them. This could be, for example, kids living off campus in an apartment, and they could be with 3 or 4 friends. That would be considered a household for purposes of the census. A child living in foster care, if they're living with you, you would count them. If you have a relative who didn't have a home and is temporarily living with you on April 1st, you would count them. Now, for other people who are living in what we would call group quarters, college dormitories, correctional facilities, nursing homes, group homes, residential treatment facilities, they are all going to be counted by the facility, and that's a special process that I'm not going to go into now. But if any of you are working or affiliated with a facility like that, then we can put you in touch with someone at the Census Bureau for information. Next slide. So let's say you forget to include someone, or let's say somebody fills out the form on March 18th and then there's a baby born in the household between then and April 1st. You can still go in and amend your form. And that also is the benefit of doing it online. You just submit the corrected response, or you could call using your address and give them the updated information. Next slide. So what can you do? There are different organizations that are going to host what we call a kiosk, or they're going to host a census day. And this could be around an event or just at a location where people could come and fill out their census form. Now, some of you may be willing to volunteer. There might be some schools who are willing to let people come into the school on certain days to fill out their census form, or maybe the municipal office is going to open up their doors on certain Saturdays and let people fill out their census form. A couple of things that people should know. It would be important to tell people ahead of time that this is going to be available so that they bring all the information they need. For example, they may know the names and the ages of everyone in their household, but they might not know the year they were born. And so you'd want to tell them to make sure they bring that information with them. There should be some people at the location who can answer basic questions, clarify who's considered part of a household, in case somebody who's coming in has a question about that, whether they should include the friend of the family or a neighbor who's moved in with them temporarily. But one thing that they have to be able to tell people is that they are not census takers, so they're not bound by the same confidentiality. And it's important to relate that to people coming in to complete their census form if you're going to be one of those volunteers. The other thing is, you should let the person complete their own census form. And if they're not comfortable using the computer that's provided, or they are having some language issues, then let them use the phone system and let them call in and have somebody take the information over the phone, somebody who's actually from the Census Bureau. And the other thing is, people need to complete the answers themselves. So the person who's helping should not be, they have to accept the answer the person gives them and type that in to the website. You can't think you know what the answer would be and do it for the person. Next slide. So some of the outreach activities the Census Bureau is encouraging, and we are encouraging people to host community events, and where you can share materials. On your screen right now is the website address that's actually linked to AC&J's website, census2020nj.org. You can find a lot of materials there. You can download them. If you're going to have an event and you need a large quantity of those materials, you can contact our office and we'll try to get them to you. There are general fact sheets about the census. Also, we have a fact sheet about who is in a household and who should be counted. And we have a fact sheet that's really geared towards the 0 to 5 population, where some of our other coalition members have fact sheets in other languages as well. The Census Bureau also has a section of their website, which is statistics in schools, which I would encourage anybody who is involved in a school to really go explore that. There's a tremendous amount of information which can be used as part of the curriculum and merged into an ongoing lesson plan, and they've made it really easy to use it. So we would encourage that as well. Any of you who might be sending out mailings into your community or through an organization, a faith-based organization, or maybe the town has a calendar or the town sends out messages, or if it's possible to do a robocall where you could just remind people that their invitation to fill out their census has been sent out. Would they please complete it? That it is important for the entire community that they finish it. Anybody who has newsletters that they could add information. I know Sustainability Group is sending out information, but we would encourage everyone to do that. And finally, you could host a Census Action Day, either in March after the initial invitation to complete the census form comes out, or in April, just to remind people to complete their census form. But just continue to remind people that it's easy, it's safe, and it's important. Next slide. So here's just some other resources. Again, our page, if you want to see the hard to count maps, you can either go through the CUNY website or the Census Rome website. If you are interested in applying for some extra work, or you know somebody who is looking for some extra work, here's the link where they can apply: 2020census.gov/en/jobs. We would encourage, they have to hire over 60,000 people to complete the census, and while they've made a lot of progress, they're still looking for more people to apply. And again, the Census Bureau has a tremendous amount of resources in multiple languages on their website. Next slide. All right, so I'll just leave you with this message. 10 years is a long time. If we don't get it right in this year, it's going to be another 10 years before we can get the right count. So if we miss a 2-year-old child in 2020, we're not going to be counting them in the federal resources that come to the state of New Jersey until they're age 12. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Samantha.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary, for that excellent presentation. I'm sure that many of you have questions. We will take all questions at the end of the webinar. So now I'm going to transition and just talk about Sustainable Jersey Census Initiative. So over the next few months, as I'm sure you've probably already seen, we'll be working on an initiative to engage municipalities, schools, and green team members in a complete count for the 2020 census when those mailers go out in March. I'm not going to touch on these too much because Mary already did an excellent job of conveying the importance of getting an accurate count in municipalities and in schools. So, why should green teams help? Well, green teams are already engaged in community outreach efforts, and as a trusted voice in the community, they can help improve participation rates by sharing information with municipal officials and the community on the importance of an accurate count, the safe and easy methods for completing the census, and connect with those in hard to count areas to improve the count across the state. Similarly, in schools, teachers, principals, superintendents, and school board members are the trusted voices in the school community. They can contribute to a complete count by sending information available on the Statistics and Schools website to students' homes that explains how and why to complete the census and the importance of counting all children, as Mary has been talking about, especially those under the age of 5 or those living in complex households. Your town, county, or other organizations in your area may already have established themselves as a complete count committee, which is a volunteer committee established by local governments, community organizations, and others to increase awareness and motivate residents to respond to the 2020 census. Your town doesn't need to have a complete count committee to use the U.S. Census Bureau outreach resources and educate the community about completing the census, but it is a good way to share resources and gain support for census outreach efforts. So all of these links on here will be hyperlinked when the presentation is posted as a PDF. So you can essentially search via this link for complete count areas, committees in your area. You can also become a census partner or a statistics in school census partner. There's a number of resources available that are on the U.S. Census Bureau's website, ACNJ's website, and the New Jersey Department of State's website. Mary's already highlighted a number of those. One thing that I've found particularly beneficial is you can sign up to receive emails from the U.S. Census Bureau and ACNJ as well, and that will give you some daily insight into census activities that are going on, and you'll also learn some fun facts. You can also follow the organizations on social media and easily share the messages that they're already putting out with others. And lastly, you can request a census speaker for an upcoming event. So if you're holding a green fair, you could invite someone to table at that event to talk about the census. So there's a number of different resources to help you in this effort. So municipalities applying for certification in 2020 or 2021 can earn points in the community education and outreach action for 2020 census outreach efforts and points for an innovative community project action for an extensive community education and outreach effort and the establishment of a census kiosk where people can come to complete the census. The work should have been performed by municipal elected or appointed officials and/or staff or Green Team volunteers. Partnerships with other community groups on census outreach efforts are also eligible so long as the municipality or Green Team played a significant role. For the community education and outreach action, 5 points can be awarded for a census education and outreach initiative that is addressed either by holding an in-person event, such as a lecture, workshop, training, or educational presentation at a community event, or via online or print communications, such as a column in the municipal newsletter, web page on the municipal website, podcast or video, or an active social media campaign. A municipality applying for certification in 2020 or 2021 as well can also earn points for an innovative community project submission if it was actively involved implementing a comprehensive education and outreach effort that included multiple communication strategies and established a site, as we've already talked about, a census kiosk, where people can come and complete the census. Any location where the community gathers that has internet access or phone service can be a site to complete the census questionnaire. As Mary already said, since hard to count communities often lack access to internet and phone service, this is a great way to try to assist those communities. Sample locations include libraries, schools, recreation centers, senior centers, childcare centers, and many more. Really, anywhere your community congregates that has that internet or phone access is a great location. So both of these actions contains a list of census resources to help you with the education and outreach initiatives and also establishing a kiosk. So I'm just going to quickly take you to the Sustainable Jersey website so you can see what I am referring to. So if you just click into the resources section of the appropriate action, you're going to see 2020 Census Outreach resources. We've listed a number of U.S. Census Bureau materials, some general information, outreach toolkits, how you can help, a public service announcement toolkit, links to the different social media accounts. We've also provided resources from Advocates for Children of New Jersey. You can learn more about census kiosks from information that they have on their website as well. Find a complete count committee, search for hard to count areas near you, counting young children, and also link to the New Jersey Department of State's website. So a school applying for certification in 2020 can earn points for the community education and outreach action for census outreach efforts performed by school officials and or staff or Green Team volunteers. Partnerships with other community groups on 2020 census outreach efforts are also eligible, so long as the school or Green Team played a significant role. So for this action, you'll need at least 2 sustainability-focused community education and outreach events or activities, one of which can be focused on educating about the 2020 census. The information must be accessible to school families as well as to the general public. Points are also eligible in the suite of student learning actions for integrating statistics in schools activities into classroom lessons. Resources are available by subject area and grade level. These activities bring school subjects to life by using real-world Census Bureau statistics to create materials for use year after year at all grade levels. Activities were developed by teachers, are easy to use, customizable, and supportive of existing lesson plans, enhance learning, boost statistical literacy, and prepare students for a data-driven world. For this action, you'll need to submit a copy of the lesson plan, samples of student work or their output, and a completed sustainability questionnaire. There's a template for that questionnaire available in the actions. For both of these groups of actions, we've also linked to a number of resources in the resources section of those actions. So I'll just go to the school site really quickly. Under actions, click on community education. You'll go to the resources section, and again, you'll see U.S. Census Bureau materials, the activities and resources that relate to the lesson plans, how schools can get involved, the social media links. We also link again to the Advocates for Children of New Jersey, link to the hard to count areas, counting young children, and the state's website as well. So at this point, this concludes the webinar for today. Before we enter into the question and answer portion, I'd just like to share some upcoming grant deadlines, webinar trainings, and other events from Sustainable Jersey. So we have 2 grant cycles open right now that are supported by the PSEG Foundation, one for municipalities and one for schools, which supports efforts to implement projects that help municipalities and schools gain points needed for the certification and make progress toward a sustainable future. The municipal deadline is coming up quickly on next Friday, and then the school deadline is on Friday, March 13th. If you're working on your 2020 certification, then this is a great opportunity to secure funding to support actions you would like to accomplish. A number of webinars related to municipal certification will be taking place over the next month as well. So if you're planning for recertification, I would highly recommend attending the Stay in the Game webinar next week. If you're planning to move up to silver, then I hope you'll join us for the Moving Up to Silver webinar. And we're also going to have a Green Team webinar at the beginning of March. The New Jersey School Boards Association, in collaboration with Sustainable Jersey for Schools, is offering members and school district personnel opportunities to attend a one-day sustainable practices working session. In each session, participants will review a sustainability wellness check, which aligns with the Sustainable Jersey for Schools certification program. Board members will receive 4 board member academy credits and 4 green leader credits for participating in a working session. Pre-registration is required and seats are limited, and the next training is on February 20th. And then lastly, save the date for our annual Sustainability Summit, our biggest gathering of change makers dedicated to advancing sustainability strategies for New Jersey. The event brings together 600 people from across the political, private, and public sectors for a high-energy day of innovation, education, and collaboration. The summit will be held on June 12th at Bellworks in Homedale. Thank you all for attending today's webinar and being patient with us as we worked out those technical issues. The webinar recording and presentation will be posted on our website by the end of the week. If there are any questions, we would be happy to answer them now. And if you do want to reach out to anyone from Advocates for Children, we have Mary's contact information and Alana's contact information, and then the Sustainable Jersey contacts as well.
Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay, so we do have a couple of questions. One question is, how can we address the concerns about privacy with the online census? Mary?
So I think you have to just reinforce that the Census Bureau keeps all information confidential. It's not that it's anonymous because they're getting information from each household, whether you're doing it via the print questionnaire or whether you're doing it online or whether you are calling in. You're still going to have to, use a computer that has an IP address. You're still going to have to use a telephone number that's identified if you call in from your home address. But it's that the Census Bureau keeps the information private. They do not release it to anybody else. It's not that it's anonymous. Because remember, even though the invitation is going to have a unique ID number and it's going to be mailed to a specific address, when you fill out the questionnaire, you're giving the names of everybody who's in the household, their date of birth, etc. The other thing I think that's important to keep reminding people that all of us benefit from the federal dollars that come to New Jersey, whether we drive on the roads, whether we attend or have family members that attend our schools, whether we access health benefits in this state. And in addition to that, most people do access some other program. The list I gave you is just really a sample of programs that are really affiliated with children, but seniors, they are on Medicare. That is funded by state dollars that are allocated based on census data. People go to clinics. They do drive on the road. So I think it's critical that we just remind people that they are benefiting from it. And the fact that they're benefiting from this programming should sort of supersede their issues about confidentiality. The bottom line is you can't force somebody to fill out the census questionnaire. All you can do is encourage. But a census taker at some point, if they don't receive a response from that address, somebody will come out and knock on the door and ask them for the information because it is required by law that they count everybody who's living in the state of New Jersey. I don't know if that
Okay.
you had a
I think that was
follow-up
great.
question.
Yeah. There's another question. Is there a way to get a census worker to attend a kiosk event to ensure confidentiality is requested by the resident?
Yes. So one of the things the Census Bureau will do, and they won't guarantee, but if people are going to host an event and you anticipate a large number of people, they're going to have what's called a mobile unit where they may send 1 or 2 census workers out that have tablets with them or computers with them, and they will be there to assist people in completing their census questionnaire. So if you think you're going to be able to organize a larger event or you anticipate getting a lot of people coming to an event or to a location, you can contact the Census Bureau and ask them to send out their mobile unit. My sense would be is that that would really have to be some event that's facilitated by a school or a municipality, and it would involve a lot of people coordinating and really promoting the event because they can't be all over the state, every day. And they're going to tend to go to areas where they think there's a lot of people have not done the self-response, or it's a lot of hard to count populations are living in a certain area. But it's definitely worth contacting them to see if you can't schedule the mobile unit to come out.
And Mary, would you say that the New York office would be the most appropriate group to email?
Yes, that's our regional office, is out of the New
Okay,
York office.
perfect. And so we've included the email address for the New York Regional Office in this presentation. It's also on our flyer on our website, so you can easily get that information to let them know that you'd like to host an event.
And can Samantha, let me just add one other thing. If
Sure.
somebody's interested, I would also get in touch with your local complete count committee, because I think if something is organized through a complete count committee, again, you're going to probably have more foot traffic, a larger event, and it'd be easier to coordinate with the Census Bureau.
Perfect. Yes. And I would just encourage everyone to look at those resources in the action, and you can try to find a complete count committee in your area to partner with them on that.
Okay, Samantha, there is a question about regarding certification. Uh, the SJ Census sites, is there a required number for a community to earn the 10 points?
For the innovative action, as long as you have one site, that's all that's required, obviously, in addition to having that robust education and outreach campaign.
Okay. Um, Thinking that let me get to the next question. I'm sorry. Is there a way to get a census worker? We did that one. I'm sorry. Will there be a long form for the census?
There will be a print form. It's still those same questions that I put on the screen earlier, which is the names, ages, birth dates, and ethnic race background of every member living at the household, and then their relationship to the person who's completing the census form, and whether you own or rent. Those are the only questions that are asked as part of this census. The Census Bureau, though, does do a whole variety of other surveys. And I have heard recently that some people have received the community survey, which is much longer and asks questions about job and income and that type of thing. That's not the census that we're talking about, which is starting March 12th.
So Les, I guess I would just say if you have any clarifying points, or i- if Mary didn't answer your question, if you can just include those in the as another question, we can try to tease that out for you.
Okay, and do you know if nonprofits focusing on census are coordinating their efforts? If that makes sense?
Yes, they
Okay.
are. So I'm part of a coalition that involves probably 10 to 15 nonprofits, including the League of Women Voters, the Institute for Social Justice, um, the Latino Action Network, and then there are also, so we're in touch with each other all the time and definitely get on calls every other week to sort of make sure we're covering different parts of the state in terms of our outreach and in terms of our presentations. And then there are nonprofits who are affiliated with different complete count committees, and the complete some of these nonprofits also received state grants, which were facilitated through the Secretary of State's office. And so they are also putting their grantees in touch with their local complete count committees. Every county was able to apply for funding from the state as well. And so part of the requirements of those grants was that the counties and the nonprofits in their community sort of coordinate. So there's been a lot of effort to try to coordinate groups to come up with a plan for the entire area. So we are doing the best we can. I know it's not perfect, but there are definite efforts to coordinate between the nonprofits and between the counties and the local complete count committees and the nonprofits.
Okay, that's great. Well, I think that's, oh, we have another one coming in. So the ACS will include questions related to demographic subjects, housing, income, age, race, education.
Yes. And that's
Okay.
much longer. That is a much longer survey. And my sense is there have been people who've been getting that survey recently. And could I just add one other thing? If people
Of
are
course.
looking to coordinate with other nonprofits or with local complete count committees, they can also email me, and I will try to connect them with the nonprofits that I know who are working in their area or their local complete count committee.
Great. I think that would be a wonderful resource for towns and schools. I appreciate that. I do see a few raised hands. I'm not sure if these people still have questions, but Barbara, I can unmute you if you have a question that you would like to ask. Barbara? Okay, I guess maybe not. Let's see. I think David, you have a question. If you'd
I
like
had a
to go ahead.
question, but I lowered my hand, so I was
Oh,
okay.
okay. No problem. Let's see if anyone else has their hand raised. I think we've gotten everyone. If you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can always connect you with Mary as well. If it's more general US Census information, if you have questions about earning points towards your certification, please don't hesitate to contact me. But this was a really wonderful webinar today. It was so informational. Thank you, Mary, so much for your time. And we'll be posting this webinar on our website by the end of the week.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.